Hi, I'm Sahir. I have been using Warm Showers for my first long tour that I did, which was from Glasgow to Istanbul earlier this year. So I achieved the biggest thing on my bucket list earlier this year when it came to travel by cycling from Glasgow to Istanbul. So that was a journey of just under 3,000 miles. It took me exactly 2 months. I did it on my own and took my tent and, did the whole thing. And that was my first ever long tour. And it was the big one. I'd had this ambition to cycle across a continent ever since I read Dervla Murphy's book about cycling from Ireland to India, which she did in the 1960s by herself as an Irish lady with a gun. I think she took a gun with her. There was no GPS, there was no mobile phone. And I remember reading her book and just thinking, this is the most badass thing I've ever heard of a woman doing on her own. And one day I want to do my own smaller version of it with a lot more technology. And, it's easier now. So I did. So that was the big one sort of ticked off. But when you give yourself permission to do the things that you've been dreaming about, sometimes you then come up with new dreams, right? So as soon as I gave myself permission to be like, this is the year I'm going to do it, I thought, well, what's next? What I'm planning next is to continue that journey from Istanbul and eventually end up in my ancestral village in Pakistan, where my granddad emigrated to the UK from. So in total, the whole journey will be a sort of reverse migration. I'm a pretty light packer as it is. So I always err on the side of not taking enough probably and kind of hoping and wishing that things will work out as you go. And things usually do work out as you go. But even though I did take perhaps less than others, so I had 2 big panniers on the back of my bike. And that was it. I didn't have any front panniers. I've seen people out there with 4 panniers and a rucksack or like with a big trailer full of stuff. I think because it was Europe, I just, there's cafes everywhere, the ATMs everywhere. If I was in the middle of a desert, I would need something different, but it's Europe. So on that front, I guess, depending on where you're going, you probably need less than you think, unless it is genuinely the Kazakhstan desert or something, which is one of my future planned trips, where you do need to carry a lot more. So even though I took on the lower side, I guess, of bike packing, I still ended up ditching things as I went. You realize you don't really need as much as you think you do to be comfortable. Or also for me, the weather got better. So I started in April and finished in June. So I could, give away or send back home a lot of my warmer weather stuff. Even my waterproof trousers eventually. I thought, it's just not raining here, I can send them home. I ended up giving away my stove, actually. I took a stove initially, thinking that'd be quite helpful for camping and cooking. But again, because it's, Europe, actually, to be honest, the amount of things you can cook on it are really limited anyway. Over 2 months, it gets a bit repetitive, and it was easier and cheaper often just to buy something from a bakery or a supermarket, have a salad, once it's warmer. And I got more and more determined to carry as little as possible. And it became a bit, I kind of want to say, a spiritual aspect of the journey is just going light, going fast and realizing how little you need. I didn't set out to do it that way, but that emerged. And so the more I could give away, the more I did. And actually, to Warm Showers hosts ended up benefiting from, waterproof trousers, stoves, all sorts of things that didn't make sense to, send all the way home. I mean, it's a change in lifestyle, right? So you're traveling with not very much stuff, but you're making a trade-off there, which is you're pretty much in the same clothes every day. So you can't have the lifestyle you have at home on the road, but as long as you accept that, you're going to, no makeup, one pair of shoes, it's just a different way of living. Yeah. Honestly, I would hugely recommend it. It's brilliant for so many reasons. And I think for women and for women on their, doing it on their own, or if you do it with a friend or a partner or whatever, that's also great. It can be quite life-changing. Yeah. There is something unique about traveling solo on a bike. I'm not going to say it's better or worse than traveling in a couple or in a group. I think they're all completely different, to be honest, but you do have to realize it is a very different experience. So traveling on your own, that old adage where they say, go solo, go now, go fast. And if you want to do something, it's something like that. I may not have got that exactly right, but the go solo bit is a crucial part of that. If you're on your own, you have complete freedom. You choose when to stop, where to stop, what to eat, how fast to go. On the other hand, you're responsible for everything, navigating, locking. If you need to go into a shop, there's no one to watch your bike. You're constantly having to be responsible for everything. You're making all the decisions every day, and that decision fatigue can kick in. So it's a completely different experience in a group where you might divide those responsibilities up. Someone goes to the shop, someone finds somewhere to stay, someone navigates, and you can be a bit of a passenger. On a solo journey like I did for those nearly 3,000 miles, you're never at any point a passenger. You have to have your wits around you. You have to constantly be aware of what's happening around you. You also have to interact an awful lot more with people and the world in general and the landscape. So I went just a holiday, like a week, with a group of friends in Germany earlier this year in the summer. And it was amazing how different that experience was, because I probably couldn't name hardly any of the places we went through. I didn't speak to maybe more than one person who wasn't in the group that whole time. You just don't need to. Like one of you goes in and orders all the coffees, you go to a restaurant and you're all chatting to each other. So the waiter and other people eating don't necessarily speak to you. You have that level of like insulation, which can be a great thing in terms of comfort and safety and so on. But then that insulation also keeps you one step removed from the people and places that you're going through. So for me, I like to do a bit of both, but I wouldn't give up solo adventuring, because you just feel so much more immersed in the places you are. You're being forced to interact with the people who live there and other travelers, which can put you out of your comfort zone, but you learn so much more that way. And Warmshowers is a good example of that. As a solo traveller, I found myself welcome, perhaps especially as a solo woman travelling. There's lots of Warmshowers hosts who I stayed with who said they would prioritise that sort of traveller. They wouldn't take a group, or they wouldn't have space for a group. They might be more reticent even with a couple, but with someone traveling on your own, you're more likely to have that hospitality. I was terrified. Traveling on your own, you're forced to face all of your fears. And, people have said to me so many times, wasn't that a really brave thing to do? You must just not be scared of anything. And it's the exact opposite. Like, I was scared probably throughout the whole journey of something. I was scared of leaving the house the first day I left, on my own. I was scared of crossing the channel and thinking, oh my goodness, how will I remember to cycle on the other side of the road? I was scared every time I went into a shop that my bike might not be there when I got back. I was petrified of the dogs in Eastern Europe, the stray dogs that just run after you. And again, if you're in a group or a couple, you might be, you've got a bit of a joint attack. When you're on your own, you feel completely vulnerable. And of course, staying in hostels or solo wild camping, these things all come with risks when you're on your own. So I felt scared a lot on this journey. I also was forced to overcome my fears in a way that I can avoid much more easily at home. And the rate at which I overcame my fears was just unparalleled. I think in my life to date, you have no choice unless you literally just stop and fly home. You just have to keep going. And that's a great learning experience. It's a great growing experience. I'm not an athlete. I haven't done these tours before. I'm a mother. I don't have a huge income. Like, I'm just a normal person. And, I had this on my bucket list because I read a book by, another woman who did this for the first time and just took off. So it's hopefully going to inspire somebody else to do something that they want to do, because I really don't think you have to be a special sort of person. You just have to literally just decide. The hardest thing is deciding you're going to do it. And after that, yes, you're scared. Yes, you face fears. Yes, there's logistical difficulties. But genuinely, the hardest thing is making the decision. And once you've decided you're doing it, then it's just a case of breaking it into small chunks of planning. Okay, so I'm going, right. Okay, I better plan a route. I better find an app that I can do that on. Okay, I'm going. Okay, let me get all my camping stuff out and see what I need. And then it becomes much more manageable, and it's hard to be scared of opening a tent, or taking your bike to the shop to get it serviced. These things are not scary. The whole thing in its own is scary, but once you decide to do it, you then break it down into all these tasks. It becomes just a to-do list. It becomes just like a normal day at work, actually, planning one of these things. And then you go, and that's scary too, but you break that down into a task. Okay, I'm going to pedal for 1 hour, and then I'm going to stop and have this croissant that's in my bag. And then you're like, I'm going to pedal for another hour, and then I'm going to stop and have lunch. And you just take it like that. I learned about Warmshowers when I was planning the trip. So I'd never been a member on it. I hadn't even heard of it. Surprisingly few people have, who I've mentioned after I came back. And, one of the most common questions I get from friends, family, but just people I tell about or have heard about the journey in other ways, they'll ask, where did you sleep? And I can understand, because of course, if you're staying in a hotel every night or something, it becomes completely unaffordable for many people. So telling people about Warmshowers has been it's enlightened me in the fact that a lot of people maybe don't know about it, who I thought might have, because they do adventures or they're, into the outdoors. But once people hear about it, unanimously, people think, what a great idea. And one of the best things that I found about it was that everyone you stay with is does cycle touring themselves. So they get it, they understand what you need as a cycle tourist. They have their own stories to share. They often know, the local area better than you do, so they can share tips on your route, and they'll always want to talk to you about your route. And I got so many tips, like cycling specifically, or someone will have a tool that you need that you didn't carry with you. There's always a place to store your bike. There's just it's such a brilliant idea because it's so specific to the needs of someone who's doing a long distance bike tour. Warmshowers really helped me connect with the places that I was traveling through in a much, much deeper way. Because, as you're cycling through and you stop in a cafe or you stop at the side of the road for a break, you often have, I found literally hundreds over the course of a week, for example, of very small interactions with people. A wave, a smile, a nod, a beep from a car of encouragement, a very small conversation with someone in a shop about what you're doing. And any other cycle tourists you see going the other way, they'll stop and have a quick chat. So there's lots and lots and lots of very brief encounters. But Warmshowers was excellent at giving a deeper connection with people who lived in the local area. Because, you've got the whole evening or some of the next morning, you're relaxed, you're not cycling, you're not desperate to get off and back on your bike. Plus, you can skip a lot of the small talk that comes from people who've never done this kind of thing, asking you, oh, wow, how long is it? Or how do you eat? Or whatever, all the questions that cycle tourists know because they've done it. So you can skip all of that and get straight into much more knowledge of the place that you're staying in. And, I learned loads about Hungarian politics, for example, which I knew nothing about because I stayed 2 nights with a Warmshowers host in Budapest who really kindly let me went out for the evenings and, she would take me on walks and she was very knowledgeable about the state of politics in the country. Similarly, in Vienna, I stayed with a really lovely family for 2 nights. And they gave me loads of recommendations about where to go locally. And I was able to babysit for them one night and they went out and, just chatting about, in the course of that kind of time, you just chat a lot more about your trip, but also you hear about their previous experiences. One family I stayed with later on down the line, closer to the end of the journey, they were off to Turkey themselves as a family, a mum and dad, and 3 very young children. And it was amazing listening to their plans. I've got 2 young children. I haven't taken them on a cycle tour with me yet, but I learned a lot from them about their planning for that and the various contingencies that they put in place and the routes that we're going to take through Turkey. So it really helped me on this journey, but it really inspired me as well for things that I might do in the future. There were so many benefits of being part of the Warmshowers community for me on this long tour. The basics of having somewhere to stay in terms of your, just your finances to help fund a trip like this, having the availability of somewhere you can stay, particularly in big cities that are otherwise could be really expensive. So financially, there's a huge benefit. Culturally, there's a huge benefit that you're staying with people who live there and have cycle toured usually in that area. So you learn an awful lot about different routes, about the area. The kind of community aspect of it is really helpful, especially if you're solo touring. It can get lonely. You can miss home, you can miss your friends and family. And being in like a family environment or like a home environment as opposed to a hostel or a hotel or even camping, just being in a homely environment where the radio's on and there's, a meal being cooked in the kitchen, it can make you feel less homesick and it can be very comforting. And often, always actually, Warmshowers hosts volunteer to do this. So they're always very welcoming. Just from an emotional sort of comforting standpoint, when you're out there on your own every day, it can be a real respite from some of the challenges on the road. I've heard this many times that people experience so much kindness when they go and do any kind of long journey. I was really hoping to experience that myself, and I did on the road. And I think one of the common things that people who go on long distance tours or journeys of any kind, whether it's on a bike or on foot or anything else, is that they come back and they want to pass that forward and pay that forward. And, that's something I've read in loads of other people's accounts of their journeys. And I experienced the exact same thing, having benefited from so much kindness and generosity and just care from people, from strangers. Warmshowers hosts, at the end of the day, you don't know them before you go, and they are, taking a risk of welcoming you into their home. And so benefiting from that hospitality and generosity just, I think, inspired me, and as it's inspired many others before, to want to pay that forward. So I really, really enjoy having come back a few months ago. Certainly over the summer in Glasgow, I was able to host, quite a few cyclists that were passing through, less so as the weather's got colder and the days have got shorter. But it was such a lovely thing to know that, first of all, I was paying forward a lot of the kindness I'd experienced, but also hopefully then these cyclists would do the same for others in the future. And so you're just part of this community, which is, of kindness really, and generosity and all these nice things that make the world go round. And you feel like there's a flow to it, that, you experience it, you pass it on, that person you've given it to passes it on. And you can be sure that, people who are inspired by my journey or other journeys will experience something similar, because everybody is continuously sort of paying this forward. I've really enjoyed hosting people who've come through Glasgow on their cycle tours, because they are inevitably really interesting people. The sort of person that goes cycle touring and then wants to stay in someone's house as well and have that interaction, by definition, I suppose, is going to be somebody who is interesting, has stories to tell, wants to chat to you and hear about your experiences too. And one of the loveliest things about it is hearing their take on your city or your country. I've cycled around Scotland on short tours before I did this longer one. But, I was born and brought up here. I have a particular take on it. It's fascinating and often really insightful, actually, getting the view of a young Frenchman or a German couple, who've maybe come to Scotland for the very first time and maybe doing different kinds of cycle touring. I had some that were off on gravel bikes and mountain bikes, and you learn a lot actually about your own place of, where you live and your own homeland, if you like, from the eyes of other people.